I am indeed very pleased to bring to the stage John Murphy, President and Chief Financial Officer from the Coca-Cola Company, for a fireside chat with Brian Sozzi, great friend of CCP's, Yahoo Finance, on how Coca-Cola Company is leveraging AI for the future. John and Brian, please join me. A round of applause, please.
All right. Well, John, good to see you.
Likewise.
I imagine this conversation is going to talk about how you're going to feed humanoid robots powered by AI, right? No pressure. Not yet.
No pressure. Indeed.
Too soon.
I was in a plant last week actually, and we were talking about bringing in robots to do predictive maintenance. A very exciting topic, I know, for all of you, but it's just one of many examples where, you know, this age is on us.
How far away is Coke from doing that? Like, you go into a plant and you're going to have robots packaging the materials that you provide.
It's happening. It's happening as we speak, and accelerating at scale. You know, predictive ordering, predictive maintenance, automated warehousing. These are all part and parcel of the supply chain that we operate today. The more advanced world of robots it's just around the corner, and the impact that it's having and will have on any company's ability to create value is substantial.
There's so much focus on the street on how much companies are spending on AI. I mean, you're the CFO. You got to sign off on these projects. Like, what are some of the biggest projects at Coke that you're signing off for, not only next year, but in the next 3 to 4 years?
So I think it's very tempting to invest in everything, and there's certainly enough people who come with those requests. 2 years ago, we took a step back and to organize ourselves, and so we have set a set of priorities that look at the ability of the broader use of the word technology to impact our business through the lens of the consumer. We're very consumer-driven. Through the lens of the customers that we work with. We work with 30 million customers around the world. And then through the lens of the enterprise, how do we run a better company? And number one. Number two is, for me, scale is the name of the game. You can run hundreds of initiatives that are interesting, and each one of them will deliver a little piece. But it's the ones that can scale and have material impact ultimately on your value creation algorithm. They're the ones that are super interesting. And we've identified a handful. Some of them, I think, will get there, and some of them will fail.
What have you said no to? Like, what made no sense to put in the Coke system?
On the consumer front, let me just think of a good example. We've had a big ask on how do you take your innovation to the next level, and it's tempting, but there's not yet the thread to take it from the dollars needed to the impact it'll have. So we're pruning. Let's put it that way. I'm a pruner, and I have developed a degree of unpopularity in the degree to which we're pruning in this area.
Well, it's the job. I mean, it's the CFO. You got to sign off.
Part and parcel of the job, yes.
So, like, this year, not this year. Let's look to next year. Like, how much do you spend on AI projects? Is that a line item now on your balance sheet, or does it all fall under CapEx?
So I'll broaden it a little bit and say, how much do we spend on technology, on digital? Because there's a lot of interchange of language. We spend, including our marketing spend, a couple of $2 billion a year on activities that are directly linked to technology. And 2 years ago, we had over 800 initiatives making up that spend.
You're a busy guy.
And today we have 100.
Wow.
So I think it's incumbent to get really super clear on where are the areas you can create new value. And then learn how the technology companies operate. They don't operate with the good ones with multiple agendas. They operate with one backlog. And you have to drive discipline as well as encourage creativity and innovation. And the two don't always go hand in hand.
I work at a tech company. We just happen to have a newsroom. Yahoo's very focused, on innovation. We do our own thing. So, like, how have you seen the lift? Like, what is the financial lift from these AI projects? Can you say it's a penny a share, or it's not measurable just yet?
It depends on the activity. On the consumer equation, it's difficult to separate the specific lift that some of the generative AI work that we've been doing in the last couple of years. What we do know is that it drives tremendous engagement, and ultimately, over time, engagement is our friend and is directly linked to our ability to continue to grow the business. When it comes to working with our bottling partners, we operate in a franchise system. We have over 200 bottling partners around the world. Bringing AI capabilities into the customer relationship, we can measure a discernible lift. And depending on the activity, it can be anywhere from 3 to 7 or 8% relative to a base that is not using some of these capabilities. So it's real.
How have you gotten up to speed? We were talking a little bit on the back, like how much the industry has changed over the past 20 years. Like, how do you get up to speed as a leader on some of this stuff that is literally every new day? There's a new AI tool, a new platform, a new capital raise out of some company we've never even heard of yet.
Well, I think first of all you've got to stay really curious. It's tempting sometimes as you go up an organization to think that you've kind of gotten there. You realize that when you actually get there, you're only starting. And I think maintaining that as a mindset is super important. Secondly, having an outside-in paradigm to always challenge what you're doing, whether it's in technology or other spaces, is important. And thirdly, not dissimilar to what the last speaker was saying, I think we have moved from a model where we try to do everything ourselves. I was sharing with Brian earlier that in the 90s, we thought we could develop email systems better than the technology companies. And that day, thankfully, is well and
You're not
true.
in the email game.
We're not in the email game. But developing an ecosystem of partners who you know are going to be around for a long time to come and who have the ability, as I say that previous speaker was talking about, to help you continue to iterate, pivot where necessary, and complement the capabilities that they offer with what we offer. So we've got NVIDIA, OpenAI has become a really good partner. Microsoft is a terrific partner for not only for our company, but for our franchise system in general.
What do you learn from some of those players?
We learn, how they're thinking about the future, and we learn about the capabilities that are coming at us that it's difficult to get your head around. We had a session last year with the Microsoft team, and they were introducing to us the whole the Copilot capability. And it's one thing to be told what it might do on a screen, and it's another thing then when you get back home and you have it on your own devices, and you start seeing the potential that something like this has to offer. And I think it's then really important to iterate, to not expect it to be perfect on day one, but these models learn faster than we do. And when you allow them to learn, then over time they become even more impactful and effective. And I think that's part and parcel of how companies need to think about these capabilities coming at us.
What do you think the human impact will be?
I see this as just a new capability. It's a little bit like, what's the human impact of having internet 30 years ago? It certainly did not reduce the demand for people. I think it just changes where you allocate your people resources. I've seen, just in the last couple of years, this world of AI or generative AI it's seeping into the company as opposed to there's, a big bang and on this day forward we will be an AI. I don't see it working like that. It's just an ongoing opportunity to do things better.
Do you see major cost savings?
In some areas, yes. In some areas, yes. I think for companies like ours who operate at scale, the ability to compress time, like time is a number is very difficult sometimes to put a value on, but the ability to compress time and to do things exponentially cheaper is now available in the world, particularly in the creative world. In the analytical world, first of all, you've got to have the right data for AI to be your friend. When you don't, it can get you into a lot of trouble.
Yes, it can.
And we're still, legacy companies, I think, did not grow up with a view to organize everything in a way that AI can come in and take advantage of it. So, getting your foundations right, getting your house in order on the data front has been super important. But once you do that, the ability to compress time to make faster decisions. We have in our finance organization, in parallel, we have a forecasting model. So at the start of every quarter, I can get the forecast, the revenue forecast for the quarter from this model. And for the last 6 quarters, our operators hate me for this. It's more accurate in its first readout than the ongoing estimates I get from people.
That's going to be helpful in terms of like managing
tremendous. And people say, well, what's the big deal? And say, well, I can make a decision now in the 3rd or 4th week of a quarter that historically you might wait until the 8th or 9th. That makes a huge difference in your ability to direct and organize where you want to put your resources to the best use.
You mentioned you have a lot of data coming at you. Are you at the point now where you're using these models and AI to design beverages, to come up with the next hit product that comes from the company?
We are in the, I would say, and if Nancy, our head of R&D was here, would say we're in the early chapters. We've got a couple of really cool projects that have already hit the market. One of the interesting areas that Tina and her team are working on is that a lot of the product development, the package development we do, is as a result of feedback from people who hopefully will then go and use them. But quite often there's an enormous difference between what people tell you and then what they go and do. And which is one of the reasons why innovation in beverages is historically unsuccessful. The success rate is in the low single digits. And so to move the needle to, let's say you get to the mid-teens, is pretty impressive. It gives you a competitive advantage. And so there's the ability nowadays to, in our dialogue with people who talk about what they like and what they don't like, there's an ability to differentiate between what they're saying, is that what they're really feeling? And so you get closer to the say then equals the do. And that allows us, hypothetically, this is why it's still in the early chapters, should allow us to improve our hit rate on what we develop.
I mean, if we're having this conversation a year from now, I mean, do you imagine, how far away are you from like a steady stream of AI-powered products?
It's like what I said earlier. I see it as a seeping in process versus necessarily there being a date and time. I often get asked from some of our investors, what inning are you in?
They love that question.
And I always say it's the wrong sport. Like I know people still love baseball. I love it too, but that assumes that there's a finite end. Baseball games always end. Sometimes it takes to the 16th or 17th inning, but they always end. Whereas in the game we're in today, it's an iterative game. It should be what version are you in, not what inning are you in. And so with regard to the innovation piece, I think we're in the if you go back to the iPhone 1.0 and you had one in your pocket today, you'd say, what am I doing with this thing? Yeah. We're kind of in that phase at the moment, which for me is exciting because you can start imagining a new set of opportunities that heretofore were not possible.
Well, in terms of putting AI to advertising, what inning are you in?
AI to advertising, we're on version 1.0.
Yeah, well,
2.0.
tell us about the new ad.
Yeah, so the new ad, there's a good story to the new ad. We were early last year. We're invited to participate in some of the first phase of the work that OpenAI produced and delivered. We did a campaign last year in which we worked with them to use all of the Coca-Cola assets that we have in our archives and democratized the opportunity for people, regular people, to help create interesting stories, interesting images using that set of archives. And that was the first campaign that we did last year. And it was incredibly successful in terms of the engagement that we got, plus the knock-on awareness that it drove. This year, as we get into the Christmas period, we have gone one step further, as has the technology, in being able to marry text, voice, and video, and to be able to produce or reproduce an ad that dates back to the mid-90s and reproduce it and give it its 2024 flavor. And some people love it. Some people are still undecided.
Everybody's a critic.
And some people are experts who do not like it. But for us, it's less about do you love it or do you not. It's more about this is the future. It's arrived, and you can only get better by trying, by experimenting, and then learning from it. I'm sure we'll learn a ton from this, and the next one will be the version 3.0.
Well, that ability to move at that speed, I mean, how will that change the perception of the brand over time?
I think brands today are probably more challenged than ever in terms of managing the paradox of sustaining a core identity, and yet in the world that we live in, being open to inviting many to contribute to the ongoing evolution of that identity. And that's what's happening in this age we're living in. You've got an invitation to the public to use the assets that we have in our archives for over 135 years is something that I think 15, 20 years ago would have been deemed heretic. And yet the world we're living in today, that's par for the course.
Do you have concerns like letting in an open AI into that treasure trove that is the Coca-Cola archive?
We pay some people to be always concerned on that very front. The part of the identity of some of our brands is that there's a piece of magic. Coca-Cola has got a piece of magic that you can never rationalize, which adds to its allure, to its mystique, and to its endurance over time. And you can only sustain that by having guardrails, appropriate guardrails, to protect what we need to protect, so that it does not become a rational idea.
Well, how concerned are you that there will be, as these models move even faster, we consume more data, that things do become irrational? What's the impact to corporate America, if not civilization at large?
I think it's one of those paradoxes that is front and center today. Like for every left, there's a right. For every high, there's a low. For every blue, there's a red, and vice versa. And I think to not just to survive, but to thrive and prosper in a world that kind of is trying to maybe pull you in different directions. I think that's the art of leadership and management in today's world.
This is, so this morning, Walmart reported earnings. Of course, you sell your products at a Walmart. I was thinking about how that company is using AI. Like, how does all these changes that a lot of the people that you work with, like a Walmart or a Target, what they're doing, how does that change the dynamics of your business? All of you are working on AI. I mean, I imagine if you're all working on it at the same time, like the changes could be pretty profound.
They are, and I think we're all going to pull each other along. Walmart has been investing and working on their technology agenda for many, many years now. And I think they would be the first to acknowledge that some things have gone really well and some things they've learned from and have adapted and pivoted. But they have been at the forefront in their industry in anticipating the future and betting then appropriately to be there and be ready for it when it comes, and that it's showing up in the results now.
If a company like that is moving so fast, like what changes that does it require for a Coke to make, like on its supply chain? If a company of that size is moving at that speed, I imagine, in part because of AI, that's going to cause changes in how you do business.
One of the biggest metrics that companies like Walmart measure companies like ours on is your fill rate, is your ability to deliver on every order that comes in. And they set a high bar. And so for us to not only survive but be their best partner, it's a great motivation for us to continue to step change our own performance. And that's what's happening as we speak.
You have a lot of international experience. Like,
yes.
I always think folks think AI, it's a U.S. thing. Well, no, there's a whole other world out there. Like, what are you seeing overseas? How are you using AI overseas, and like what companies have surprised you?
Well, I've lived in Asia for many of my overseas years, and my last role before I came back to Atlanta was in Singapore. And I spent, in that 3 years, I must have visited China 40 to 50 times. And every single time I left, I would come back and say, the future of the consumer and how you engage is here. And it's true. And I think Doug McMillan, who was also had an experience in China, I think people who live and breathe markets that are ahead of the curve, particularly when it comes to technology, you're influenced forever. And and for me, seeing some of the developments in a number of the Asian markets, in the China, Singapore, India, an amazing story. The degree to which India's digitization program is fueling the underlying growth of that country is one of the least well-told stories of our generation.
Is the U.S. behind on AI?
I think it depends on, you have to decompose the U.S. I think from a consumer / in our business, in our industry, relative to the speed at which adoption is happening in places like Asia, Korea, China, to some degree, India, I think we're slower to adopt. The solutions are here, but adoption to scale is not something you can take for granted. So there, yes, I think there are other industries where the U.S. is leaps ahead of the rest of the world.
In terms of global risk, there's a lot going on in this world. Like 2 weeks after the election, like how does the CFO of Coca-Cola think today compared to a couple weeks ago, especially as you approach the new year? Planning, what could happen? How do you scenario plan it?
I think we've been I certainly have talked about this prior to what's happening at the moment. I think our experience through COVID was a huge inflection moment in how one defines and thinks about planning. So for me today, I'm interested and very focused on it, but I'm less concerned as to whether the plan is the right one. And I'm much more interested in whether the organization at hand has got the ability to pivot and adapt when you know the plan is not going to actually play out in reality. So I often think about, you've got to think nowadays about what potential future could come at you and build the muscle to be ready for whichever one actually does, and be a little bit kind of objective as to which one it is. And I think that frames very differently how you think about planning.
Well, how does it frame how you lead?
How
you lead?
I think you lead today with a lot more curiosity on what you don't know. I think you lead today with generating a sense of confidence in an organization that the plan is going to be great, but how are we thinking about future A or future D? How well are we prepared for that? And I think infusing that into an organization is the key to kind of the agility word that is so popular. And I think that's part and parcel of how we need to lead today.
I talked to you a couple of years ago when you first, I think, got this position. I mean, time flies, but I never got to ask you because you're like compressed. Speaking of compression,
yes.
like a 6-minute TV hit in a box. Like, how did you become the CFO of Coca-Cola, and how helpful was it to you that you had that international experience?
I think when I think about any C-suite role in any company today, I don't think they're as narrow in scope as perhaps they once were. And so having had the opportunity to live in 5 or 6 continents, work across our organization in many different disciplines, I think that prepares you well to take on what's expected of a CFO or somebody in the C-suite in today's world.
What is expected? Because we see a lot of these stories lately, like the role of CFO has changed. Like, how is it different today compared to, like, let's say 10 years ago?
I think the definition of stewardship has broadened in the sense that you're not only expected to be maybe a secondary or tertiary partner in the C-suite, you're expected to be as good as anybody else is there. And I think to be able to do that, you need to have both a broader range of experiences that over time build a broader range of skills. And then when you get in there, you can prepare, you know this very well, but you can prepare all you want for these kinds of roles. I think when you get in there, you've got to then learn how to enjoy it and learn how to be yourself. You take on each and every day. I take on multiple personas. From you can be the nice guy, rarely. You can be the tough guy. You can be the strategist. You can say, I can make a pretty good cup of coffee when that's needed. And I think you've got to get really comfortable at taking on multiple personas, and yet at the end of the day, stay true to who you are. I think that's, for me, the short formula.
How are you different leadership-wise, like sitting here today compared to when you first got in that seat?
I think I've got a lot more perspective. I think the number of lenses that I now default to is greater. I'm more practiced, a little more seasoned, a lot grayer. And I think when you go through a period like COVID, the aftermath of it, and you get really challenged, is you learn a lot about yourself and your ability to kind of learn how to thrive when the moment is tempting you to do the exact opposite.
In about a minute and a half left, like if, looking out to next year, if what would surprise this room ultimately about Coca-Cola? I mean, I think you're always known for your study results. I would argue been a lot more innovative on carbonated beverages over the past 2 years. Like, what's the main takeaway?
Gosh, we have, including our bottling partners, we have 750,000 people that get up every morning in support of our business. And we do a multiplier study in most markets around the world. So for every direct person we employ, about 10 other people get up the same morning to support that person. So on any given morning, we have 7 to 8 million people around the world who get up in service of our business. I've been in the Coke system for over 35 years. There have only been 2 of those years where our industry did not grow. One of them was 2020, and we have rebounded very well from that. But I think a combination of the scale, the opportunity that's ahead. We look at the number and using, you talk about data, we got a lot more precise on how many people actually drink our beverages regularly. And it's more humbling to see the truth than sometimes than not. And there's still a lot of people in the world. We have maybe 500 million people of the 8 billion people in the world who will drink one of our 200 brands once a week. So there's 7.5 billion people out there that we have the opportunity to persuade over time to move their consumption to just once a week. And you don't need to be a CFO to figure out that that's pretty big math on the opportunity that's ahead.
Well, good stuff. We'll leave it there. John Murphy, President and CFO of Coca-Cola. Next time, bring me one of those Oreo Cokes, will you? Come on.
John, thank you very much. Thank you.